This at a time, the political battles, the realities of Washington, which of course the Bush family knows quite well, continue right now, particularly with matters of spending. When I sat down with Mitch McConnell, the Senate leader, he reminded me of a back and forth with the White House over this $1.3 trillion spending plan. Now, some of you might recall at the time, the president used that as an opportunity to say, I'll sign it. I won't do anything like this again, expressing some rage at the waste in it all. And it was obvious that Senator McConnell kind of felt that the president threw he and a lot of the people who agreed to this under the bus, and that furthermore, he felt the president, or at least his people, were very aware of what was in there. Long story short, the president did sign it. Now there's talk he's going to try to rescind a lot of the spending, and that, easier said than done. Something else the speaker says he should go slowly on here. Anyway, the read on all of this with the Home Depot co-founder Bernie Marcus. I definitely got a sense, Bernie, it's very good to have you, that tension still exists between, I guess, the establishment figures in Washington and the president. Some of them smarting at a president, they said, kind of threw them under the bus. What did you make of that?
Well, you know, Trump never realized the reality of going to Washington. You know, he's used to running a big business, and he ran it, made decisions, and got things done, and it happened. Coming to Washington, he has to deal with the Congress of the United States. It's not that easy. And look, he signed that bill. It was a pretty bad bill. I mean, I know he got money for the military. It was great. He needed it. He needed to get some the Democratic votes, and they were gleeful about it, which means that we overspent again, spent a lot of money. But the truth is that I don't think McConnell is going to be able to claw it back. I mean, just the reality of Washington is not going to happen. I think that Trump
I think what he's saying, Bernie, just to be clear, he doesn't want the president to go crazy rescinding a lot of spending in there. Furthermore, he says it's a done deal. If you want to revisit this, I think what he's saying is revisit this in the future when we're revisiting this again. But what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think he's right. I think that doing it now, but it's talking points for the president. I think that the president has got. There are some tough races coming up in the House and Senate. And this is a talking point. The reality is nothing is going to happen. They're not going to go back, and they're not going to be able to do anything about it. I would recommend to the president, if I had to sit down with him now, I'd say, look, why don't you spend your time and energy now getting more Republicans voted in the House and Senate, and then you'll have a vast majority, and you could do the right thing again. But it's not going to happen, Neil. I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah, no, I actually think you're right about that. You know, Bernie, do you get a sense right now that the markets, which were dovetailing very closely with the prospects, whatever they are, for the president and surviving this, you know, Russia thing and the investigation thing, that every time, and it's been borne out again, example after example, it looks good for the president, markets revive. When it looks problematic for the president, they sink. From an investment point of view, that feeds the argument, just get this thing behind us, one way or the other. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he has to move on and sell the message. Look, the message is a good one, Neil. The tax cuts worked. We know that the tax cuts worked. Unfortunately, the American people through the media don't know the tax cuts worked. Many people today, if you realize it, don't get paid by check. It's automatically deposited in their banks. They don't even know they got a.
I think that's, you know, I think you hit on something. That's more of an issue than people know. I mean, most people are aware. I'm not saying that completely ignorant of the money that they're taking in here, but you wouldn't notice it right away, and that might be a problem for Republicans hoping to seize on the goodwill they thought they'd get from this.
Well, you know, we are very, very involved with Job Creators Network, and Job Creators Network now has a bus tour around the country. Saying tax cuts work, and tax cuts do work. And today, in fact, they're meeting in Virginia Beach, and I hope there are a couple of hundred small businesses out there. By the way, nobody talks about what this has done for small businesses. I have talked to dozens of these people. So you take a small pizza place, you know, which is really where America is. There are actually 30 million small businesses in the United States with about 85 million people working for them. And nobody ever thinks about them. You only think about the big companies and how much the big companies have. I've spoken to these people. They tell me two things. Number one, this has been a terrific thing for them. They've been able to expand because they can write off their expenses the year they do. Their taxes went down. to a level, where they can handle it. They're hiring more people. They're paying their people more money. And by the way, tax cuts, this tax cut now bus tour that we're doing for job creators around the country, actually 50 stops in 30 states, is to hear these stories from these small businesses. Let them tell America, because it gets on local TV and people don't even know about it. And the key is for them to talk to their employees and let their employees understand that the amount of money that they now see in their paycheck, which is more than they had before, really came from the Trump tax cut. So I think it's a big selling job.
If you had this environment today, when you and Ken Langone were coming up with the Home Depot, would it have been a lot easier for you?
Oh, my God. If we had to, if Home Depot started out in 1979 with our first store, and if we had the restrictions and we had the litigation and we had all the things to deal with that a small business has today, I don't know how they do it, Neil, but I can tell you this. Home Depot would probably be a chain of about 8 stores, and maybe we'd be verging on bankruptcy today, only because the government helped you in those days. They were interested in creating jobs in America. And I don't know what's happened to the Democratic Party, why all of these restrictions came in. Right now, what Trump has done in this last year, by knocking out all these restrictions, you have no idea how easy this has become for small businesses. And nobody talks about it. Certainly the New York Times and CNN is never going to address this issue. Thank you for allowing me to even talk about it.
No, I was just curious. That and whether Ken Langone is right when he says that he was the brains and inspiration behind Home Depot and not you. I didn't know.
There's no question about it, and he's Italian, so I'm not going to fight with him because you know what Italians are like.
Oh, please don't get me started. Always good seeing you, my friend. Really, a corporate American visionary here. Both he and Ken Langone coming up with Home Depot in the midst of one of the worst recessions in American history. 1979, the days of Jimmy Carter. Not blaming Jimmy Carter, but it was a very, very tough time. Amazing. Bernie, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, be well.